parents know their children, but you also know yourselves. And so I think that often we need to find the right match for your child, but also the right match for your family. And so I would encourage people to think about that more holistically, I guess. And I think that we were able to find that at Cells, which is part of the reason we had such a positive experience.
St. Clement's Early Learning School in Midtown Toronto offers nursery, kindergarten, and primary school education for kids. They build on a foundation of small class sizes, individualized programming, and the exploration and discovery of a curriculum that spans arts, math, sciences, languages, extracurriculars, and French. For Julie Werry, though, and her two daughters, what makes the school so special to them is the people, the teachers and the staff, whose dedication and personal connection have kept her daughters talking about Cells even years after graduating.
Tell me a bit about who your kids are as students.
Sure. I have two girls. So Claire is 9, Caroline is 6. They both love school, but they're very different personalities. Claire is your typical oldest child, very eager to please, very personable, very outgoing, very confident. Caroline is a youngest child. She is a little bit more shy and reserved, very determined and a strong-willed little girl and a very quick learner. So she will be very quiet in a classroom setting. And then once she is comfortable, kind of just all of a sudden you realize everything you're saying, she's been absorbing the whole time.
What about, different subjects? What classes or what parts of the classroom did each child gravitate to?
Yeah. Both of them loved the play-based learning of St. Clement's Early Learning School. And I would say that because it was play-based, they were actually able to navigate their learning a little bit. They felt like they both had some ownership of their learning while at the school, which I think made for a really positive learning environment for them. Claire was at the Dramatic Center nonstop, and we had to sometimes we worked with the teachers where she had to choose something different. She loved all the creative arts and was a voracious reader. She really started reading in JK, which was, I honestly didn't even know that was happening. The teachers kind of brought it to our attention and were able to give her leveled readers that were appropriate for her reading level, not her age level. Caroline is such a math girl. Like, she loves math, she loves numbers, she loves graphs and patterns. I'd say she didn't love the art table as much as her sister did. So that was one area of her schooling where we had to encourage her to go, and the teachers worked on that. But she definitely kind of dabbled in everything, but I'd say math was where she really loved being in that corner at that center with her teachers. And anytime she got to do one-on-one with her teachers, which is always one of the centers in the classrooms, she would gravitate towards that.
Now, your youngest daughter just graduated from St. Clement's Early Learning. Your family's experience with this school is wrapping up. Tell me about when it began. How long ago was that, and what was going through your head and your heart at that time?
Sure. We had just moved to Toronto from New York City, and we're looking for a great preschool for our kids where Caroline at that point was just an infant. Claire was 3 years old. And so we were looking for somewhere that was a community for us to join. Everyone told me that when I moved to Toronto that I would make friends through my kids' classrooms. And so I was eager as a parent also to find a good fit for me because I really felt like this was going to become my social network. So in 2014, Claire started in the nursery class at St. Clement's Early Learning. And I'm actually, not surprised to say that many of the parents in that first class are still dear friends of our family. And we have been at the school now for 6 years, my oldest going all the way through, and then my youngest, as you said, just graduating this week. We were attracted to the school because it felt like a small, positive environment for those early years for kids. I chose to keep both of them there all the way through kindergarten because I thought it was a really good environment for them to feel like a big fish in a small pond before they jumped into our public school system here in Toronto. And I think that gave them a lot of confidence before they entered public school, with both who they are and how they learn. But it was, from the very first tour that we had when Claire was only 2 and we were looking at the program for the next year, it was very warm, very positive. I did really enjoy seeing the play-based learning, and during our tour, it was very evident that was something that was integrated throughout the curriculum. And I could tell that it was just that the kids were happy to be there, honestly. And my kids, that was their experience. They were always happy to go to school. They were always excited to go to school. So yeah.
You mentioned how you were looking for a home, just in the literal sense. You just moved to Toronto, but also a social circle for yourself and for your family beyond that. Before you ever stepped foot into St. Clement's Early Learning, what were your big 3 things that the boxes you wanted to tick?
Yeah. I wanted a school that was very child focused, and I definitely felt that was the case at St. Clement's Early Learning. It was always about the kid and that kind of individualized approach. I wanted a community that was not just teaching, arithmetic and literacy, but also teaching some type of community values, and that was thread throughout our experience at CELS each month. There's a virtue of the month. They talk about it at their morning assembly. They have different houses that the kids are part of where they receive points for doing great things. They receive awards for kids who exhibit those virtues. And so even at a very young age, they're talking about those values. So I think that was something that I was looking for, that it wasn't just academic, but it was also this social emotional learning for kids. And then the final thing is I was just looking for a school that was a great partner, because I was a new parent and I wanted to feel comfortable with a school and confident in a school, and also feel like the teachers knew my kid and were there to help nurture them and help me figure out how to parent them. Because as I said, my kids are very different, and all of their teachers, identified that very quickly and were able to give both my husband and I different strategies to work on at home, whether it's, kids getting really stuck on something specific or, being really sensitive. I felt like there was a constant partnership with our teachers and the administration at CELS. And as a parent, that was just invaluable for me.
Julie, tell me a bit more about you and where you were at this particular moment in your life. Was this like a big, daunting, stressful task? Was this something, you were under the gun and had to do it as soon as possible? Or were you like, we're going to do this right, we're going to do this slow? Like whatever it was, what was going on for you?
Well, we were moving from New York City, and in New York City, applying for preschool was more difficult than applying for university. As as an 18-year-old, it was a guns out, everyone, you got to get the application in at 9 a.m. at this date, or else you don't even have a chance of getting in. And we had started that process in New York City before we moved. And frankly, that was, I love New York City, but that was almost a breaking point for me, because I didn't necessarily believe in that type of system. But I also felt like there weren't other options, so I had to participate in it. And therefore, by participating in it, I was perpetuating this rat race of preschool application when your child's 15 months old. So when we moved to Toronto, I came in with that mentality of, I'm going to be behind the 8 ball because our kid's already 2. And I quickly realized that although there are many great options in Toronto, it wasn't necessarily this cutthroat experience. And so that enabled me to take a deep breath and say, okay, let's find the right fit for our family. And so we visited 3 different preschools, and it was very clear that CELS, St. Clement's Early Learning, we call it CELS for short, was the right fit for our family because of some of the things I talked about earlier. And, you know, we had a tour of the school, and Marsha, the principal, spent a lot of time answering questions with Scott and I. And I really appreciated that. You know, she wasn't trying to rush us through the process. She was, and she really wanted to get to know Claire. Claire got to come and visit a classroom, which was great. And it was all around a positive experience that I felt like we were in control of, but it wasn't something that I felt stressed about.
During that admissions process, was there a moment when you were like, whoa, this is not at all what I was expecting to experience, you know, in the New York version of this?
Yes. I mean, when Marsha, originally the tours were scheduled during a time when we were away. And so I thought, oh my goodness, we're not going to get to tour this school, because once you miss the tour, you're going to be like out of the running. It shows you're not interested in the school. So I wrote this like profuse email to Marsha apologizing. I think it was during US Thanksgiving, actually, that the tours were happening. And, you know, it's such a big holiday in the US, I'm going to miss it. And she was like, no problem at all. Why don't you tell me a time that works for you, and I'll give you a tour. And that just blew my mind, that the principal was going to give us a tour of the school. And like I said, she spent all morning with us. And then she said, why don't you bring Claire so she can go into a classroom and she can see what it's like. And that reinforced what now I know, is that they are so child-centered. You know, it was important for Marsha to have Claire be a part of that process, and also for Claire to experience the school and get to kind of dip her toe in the water in a classroom environment. And I think Marsha, you know, obviously wanted to make sure she was school ready, but it didn't feel like a test for her. It just felt very much like our whole family was being welcomed to school.
Julie, you've mentioned Marsha a few times. Tell me more about who she is and who she's been for your family through these years.
Oh gosh. So, I mean, we've known Marsha obviously for 6 years. Well, 7, I guess, if you count the year before we were admitted to the school. And she is someone who knows our family very well. She knows our girls very well. Our girls still, yes, she knows them very well. In fact, our girls talk about Miss Hamilton all the time. They use her as examples for things. She is very aware of how different my children are, which I found as a principal to be able to be aware of that was such a testament to her as an educator. She taught at the school before she was a principal there. She visits classrooms often. And the rest of her administration, Miss Cummings, has also been part of the school for a long time and knows our kids very well. So just to have 2 adults in that administrative role that both my children feel super comfortable with, and always, you know, excited to give them hugs or say hi to them at pickup or drop off. For my husband and I, she's been a great sounding board for us. A lot of families, when they leave St. Clement's Early Learning, end up going into a private school setting, and she has helped countless families navigate that. We decided to send our oldest to a public school after SK, and we're doing the same with our youngest. But I never felt like Marsha was pressuring us. She went through all the private school options with us. We did those tours. We visited our public school, and she helped us make the decision. And I think it's, again, like a testament to how well she knows our family. It was a very good fit, our public school. And I think, you know, in retrospect, it was the right decision for our family. And she helped us think through that.
Normally one might think about the teacher as that primary point of contact, that person who gets to know the family on an intimate level. But here we're talking about, you know, the most senior administrator.
Yes. I mean, the teachers obviously know our children incredibly well and would be able to, you know, tell me what reading level they're at like this. And we still are, you know, even my daughter, who's now about to complete 3rd grade, is actually still a pen pal with her teacher from JK at CELS. So those bonds remain very strong with the teachers. I think because it's a smaller school setting and because our children were there from nursery through SK, Marsha and Jen always made an effort to get to know them and to get to know us as parents. And it was, it's like having bonus people, two more, people in my children's lives who knew them and saw them grow through the years.
Let's back up a bit. How did cells first appear on your radar?
I pretty sure when we decided where we were going to live, I kind of Google searched preschools around our area. So it was very much a neighborhood school, and we live in the neighborhood that sells is where it's located. That being said, we also looked at preschools outside of our neighborhood because, as I mentioned, I was really committed to finding something that was the right fit for our family because I had a feeling this was going to be kind of an anchor for us in a new city. But in the end, the preschool that was closest to our house was the right fit. And we also love this neighborhood. So I don't think that was necessarily a coincidence. I think we love our neighborhood and we love the neighborhood school as well.
What does the idea of a neighborhood school mean to you?
I grew up not in a neighborhood school. So my idea of it has evolved because it's not necessarily something that I experienced, even though I had a really positive school experience as a kid. I will say though, for us, being able to walk to school or walk home from school every day, or seeing our friends while we're walking, or me just really getting to know other parents in the community who live across the street, or knowing they know our nanny's name and I know their nanny's name, and we're able to connect that way, has been really positive. Also, I think my kids have been able to get to know, other kids in the neighborhood and other kids who weren't in their class because they lived across the street, or they had a sibling who maybe was the same age as, a sister. And that's just enriched the experience for them because they've gotten to know, I could say quite confidently that both my kids probably knew almost every kid's name at the school when they were there, which is pretty awesome, to feel like you're 4, 5, or 6 and you knew everyone at your school. It was something I had underestimated until my oldest went to first grade at our public school, which obviously is much bigger. It goes from JK to grade 6. And she was super overwhelmed, even though she's this confident, outgoing kid. And we didn't really understand why she was so overwhelmed. And what we put together through a couple conversations with her was, well, not everyone knows my name at this school. That's what she kept saying, And so the nice thing about cells is every teacher knew my kids' names, whether they had them or not. Every teacher knew that Claire and Caroline were sisters, and so that feeling of community, I think, was just such a nice, lovely aspect for those early years for our family.
Julie, I wonder if you could tell me a bit about what happens inside the classroom, about the approach to education, about what day-to-day learning looks like at cells.
Yeah. What's one of the great things about cells is the consistency I have found. So the way that they structure the day, they come in, the kids have their cubbies, they sit down for circle time every day. And then they go through the schedule for the day. There's a special helper, which is a very big deal. When you're the special helper, it's celebrated and it's an exciting day, and you get to go up and do the calendar. And there are, again, like I said, centers where there's play-based learning happening, and some of them are a little bit more academic and some of them are a little more play-based. But at the very beginning of the year, the teachers will go through the different programs that they use. Handwriting Without Tears, Jolly Phonics, different programs that they use throughout the year to help with literacy and numeracy and the kids learning to print their letters. And that has been consistent from nursery to JK to SK. Every once in a while, they might switch the program, as any school would, as they evolve and as they think about maybe this program is better suited to us now. But it's been really neat because when my daughters have gone from one grade to the next at CELS, I don't feel like there's this huge restart because of that consistency, because of the programs they use in their curriculum are the same in nursery as JK as SK. They're able to kind of pick up in September where they left off. And, if they were ahead in a certain area, for example, my older daughter in, reading and her sight words, she wasn't limited to just at the JK curriculum. She was potentially doing a higher level in JK, or my youngest daughter in math, for example. So the curriculum was always based on where the child was at, not necessarily how old they were or what grade they were in. And I always appreciated that. And then we would get very, depending on the teacher, we would have projects that we would come home and do mostly over the weekend. There might be very little homework, but it would be, something for the kid to complete. You have a chance to do an estimation bin, for example, which at first I had no idea what that was. And then it's teaching them to, work on estimating numbers and how much is in a jar. And then you have a chance to fill it with something from home and bring it to class and share. There's a lot of learning that goes on that carpet. But it all so wonderfully ties to what they're learning in the classroom and that overarching theme. The other thing that I appreciated, in terms of communication was at the beginning of every month, we would get a calendar sent home with the curriculum essentially for the month. So it would talk about what activities they were doing what day. And as a parent who's trying to figure out what's going on in a 4-year-old's mind, that was always a really helpful prompt for me to say, oh, Caroline, it looked like you learned about airplanes this week. And there's a theme for each week. So for example, like this year, one of the themes for a month was modes of transportation. And one week they learned about trains. And the next week they learned about planes. And the next week they learned about cars. And so I appreciated as a parent that I kind of could see that. And then I could see how everything was scaffolding. And it just gave me a chance to engage on that with my child.
You mentioned as well a virtue of the month.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So every Monday morning is a whole school assembly, and everyone gets together in the morning and they wear their special uniform, and the kids, it's very exciting, and a class rotates each month on who's leading those assemblies for the school, which again is a great example of how they create little leadership opportunities for kids to be able to be a part of what they're creating at the school. And each month they talk about a virtue. So honesty or friendship, kindness, things like that, courage. And they have a whole curriculum related to social emotional learning. Much of it's story-based, where they talk about different stories, and they talk about feelings and how do you solve a problem and how do you work with the group plan. Everyone wants to do this, but you want to do that, which frankly has given me language as a parent to use when we're talking about things in our own house. But the virtue of the month has been, it's again like that consistency that I've been talking about, because it's talked about at a school-wide level, then they discuss it in the classroom. And it's also, that information is also sent home. We know what the virtue of the month is. They're hearing it in all of these different facets. I find that it's actually resonating, like that my child can verbalize and understand what these virtues are, and also be able to see it in action and recognize that. So it's been a really great part of the curriculum. It was added, I believe, a year or two ago, and I feel like it's just really been an awesome addition to the school.
Julie, I'm wondering if you yourself have had a favorite one or two virtues of the month, a few that stick out in your mind.
The courage one really sticks out for me, because as I said, for my youngest child, she's a little bit shy, especially in new situations. She can be a little bit intimidated by those type of situations. So The courage virtue really resonated with her and I, because we've talked about how we need to be brave in certain situations, whether it's having a new swim instructor for swimming. And I think it resonated for her because I've heard her use the word now, in our everyday conversations. And it's just been really neat to see her make those connections.
Thinking about the virtue of the month, but also other things that we've talked about so far, what does this tell you about, the overall objective at St. Clement's Early Learning? What are they trying to achieve in the bigger picture?
I think they're trying to raise, I think they're trying to help be partners with parents in raising kids who love learning and who are good citizens. And when I like citizens of humanity. And I really do feel like they're partners with parents in that. And I feel like it's a school that welcomes parents into that part of their children's learning at the end of the year. Each year they have their family exhibit night, which is the entire third term. So there's fall term, winter term, and then spring term. Their entire third term, they pick a theme each class to learn about. And everything they're doing ties back to this theme, both in math and their literacy and all of the different curriculums. The teachers come up with these amazing themes. And then there's this big night where they share it with, and everyone's invited. So we go, both my husband and I go. I mean, it's in our calendar, like at the beginning of the year. It's a big deal. Our nanny comes with us. My mother-in-law, my daughter's grandmother, comes with us. And my parents have flown up from the US for this. It's just a really special night for the school. And it's, again, child-led. Your child leads you through the school and shows you all the work they've done. The themes I'll give you like an example of some of my favorite themes. My oldest daughter, they did an Around the World in 80 Days theme. And so for that entire third term, they learned about 7 different countries around the world. And they learned about all these different aspects of it, Egypt and Italy and Australia and Antarctica, and they could tell you all about it. And they did art projects related to it, and they wrote stories related to it. It was just such a neat thing. She still has some of that. She's, again, 9 years old. She still has some of those projects that she made in her room because she's so proud of them. My youngest daughter did one on all the different rainforest, and they learned all about the different types of soil in the rainforest, things like that. So it's just a great example, I think, of how CELS really does use everyone in the child's world. They use the child, they use the teachers, they use the parents, they use the school as a way to engage in that learning, but also to engage in building their confidence and making them excited about learning and sharing their work, but then also they'll highlight their friends' work in their classroom. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that the school kind of exhibits the values that they talk about.
If someone were to come up and ask you about CELS, what would be the most surprising thing about the school that you would share with them?
That's a good question. I think people would be surprised that teachers who never even taught your child know your child well at the school. So there are multiple teachers at the school who know both my kids' names, know my name, know that Caroline has a peanut allergy and has an EpiPen, and they have never taught either of my children, but they are very much a part of our world. And we talk about them at home. And again, like neither of my children ever had them as teachers.
What about, when you're chatting with other parents, other parents outside the CELS community, what's the question you get most often?
I think people are curious that, like, is it a neighborhood school or is it a school that has people from all over? And I think, some people are curious that we chose public school after CELS. I would say we're in the minority. Most people continue on with private school. So that's a question I get a lot, like the comparison of public school to private school. And I would say that, our kids got, there are smaller classes at cells and things like that, but I wouldn't say that that was necessarily why I felt it was really important for them to experience those early years. It wasn't necessarily class size to me. What really resonated with me was, again, how child focused it was. So, and again, like having a smaller class is going to help with that, but I saw it throughout both of my daughters' experience that they really got to know my children as individuals, and also identified pretty quickly. I was actually shocked at how quickly they picked up on different strengths and weaknesses or interests that our kids had. The first parent-teacher meeting is often in November, and I was always amazed that the teachers could kind of summarize my kid pretty well already at that point. And I think it just goes to show how much time they spend with each child.
Is there something about cells that, now you're coming to the end of your family's experience there? Is there something that you've experienced there during this time that would have surprised you, if you had shared it with your past self who was just getting to know the place?
Probably what would have surprised me was when we first went to the school, it was very neighborhood based. Almost everyone walked to school. Like everyone had their stroller with their kid or their dog and they were walking. And I would say now that Cells has become, a better known school. And I think people have really loved the curriculum that they, the tours and seeing the curriculum and seeing the play-based learning in action, which is a pretty awesome experience. I always loved giving tours of the school. It's become less of a neighborhood school. There's more people who drive. There's more people who are from different parts of the city. The plus of that, or the pro of that, is that it definitely makes for a more diverse community. People, who live downtown, or people who speak a different language at home. And that's been enriching for my children. And for me as a parent, getting to know people with different backgrounds. But the flip side is, I would say less kids right now are walking to school. It's a little bit more difficult to organize play dates and things like that, just because they're in different parts of the city.
A little thought experiment for you. If we were to, wave a wand and make you principal, as of right now, what's a strength that you would double down on and invest in, and a challenge that you would work on?
The teachers would be the strength I would double down and invest in. I can't say enough good things about the teachers. We have had phenomenal teachers. And to think, we've been there for 6 years. My, oldest went for 3 years. My youngest actually went for 4 years because she's a January birthday. So she did half day nursery, and then did a longer day nursery, and then went to JK and SK. And so you think of the number of teachers that we've had there, because there's 2 teachers in every classroom. And I just can't, I could go on for hours talking about each of them. They've been incredible, incredible role models for my children, partners for us, positive, energetic, full of life, creative and patient, and just really wonderful. So I would double down on anything to keep those teachers there, honestly, and to keep them just, a part of the school community. And many of those teachers have been there for decades. So that is, I think, again, a testament to the school and the school community. Weakness is harder for me to, obviously I'm effusive about the school and I think it's phenomenal. So I think, probably it would tie back to the teachers, which, some teachers do leave, and there have been 1 or 2 phenomenal teachers who have left. And so I would say anything I could do to retain teachers, especially the ones who are kind of beloved by that school community, would probably, if I was principal, I would try my best to do that, though I'm sure Marsha and Jen have done that. But, I always this year was the first year that Caroline had the same teacher that Claire did. And she was Claire's nursery teacher, and now she's Caroline's SK teacher. And she's just a wonderful, phenomenal teacher. And I feel so lucky that they both got her at some point during cells. And there are a couple of other teachers that they've had that I wish, we had that cross, that both of them having it at some point as well.
Julie, were you saying that you give tours at the school?
Yes, there's a tour day, and parents are allowed to volunteer if they want to give tours. And so when we do the tour day, often in October and November, I've given tours so people can see the classrooms. There's also grade 1 and 2 for boys. And we, Claire has classmates who have gone on and graduated from the program there. So we take families throughout the different classrooms. They can see all the different nursery setups. There's different, times of day that you can sign up for nursery school, and then the kindergarten classrooms. I think what's really neat about the tours, one, like I said, being able to see play-based learning in person, that kind of a light bulb went off for me. And I thought, okay, this is the type of learning environment that I think my kid would thrive in. But also you get to see like the different teaching styles of teachers. So again, they're all play-based and they're using the same curriculum, but obviously each teacher has their own personality and their own way of teaching. And what I have really, really grown grateful for is I have found that the administration and teachers have made such great matches for my kids to the teachers who they think would be well suited to them. And I, hindsight is 2020, but like when I look back and I think about, oh, Caroline got that teacher, I know exactly why she got that teacher now that I've seen that teacher in action for 9 months, and that's, I think, goes back to when you were asking about Marsha, knowing me or knowing our kids so well. That really does help with classroom placement, because when she knows these kids, she's able to think about her teachers and think about how those matches are made.
Thinking about, the physical school and the physical facilities in campus, and about you, Julie, as the tour guide. When you're giving those tours, what's your favorite place to stop and talk?
Oh, that's a good question. I love the nursery classrooms, because that was where both of my daughters, their first idea of what school is, that's where it was formed. And you can just see all those little brains, absorbing it, and the learning carpet, and watching the teacher sit in their rocking chair and the little special helper chairs right next to it, and that kid sitting there so proudly. And I just feel like that environment for 2 and 3-year-olds, that impression, that it gives them a sense of that school and learning can be fun and positive and exciting. So the nursery classrooms are probably my favorite places to visit.
As a parent who's been through this process, a couple times, you've got 2 daughters, they're now moved on to the next phase. You've also talked to lots of parents, and you've done research of your own. Is there anything that you experienced that exists at another school, whether it's something tangible or intangible that they offer, that you went, it would have been really great if that could have been added to this awesome package at Cells already?
I think I'll give an example of at our local public school. They're very into school spirit at our local public school. And that has been something that's made my youngest daughter a little jealous while she's still at Cells. I think part of that is age appropriateness, school spirit. But I will say, 2 years ago, they started the houses. So there's the red house, the green house, the blue house at Cells, and they're all related to different authors that the kids read at school. So one's Robert Munsch, one's Dr. Seuss. I think the other is Eric Carle. And I think that they're starting that school spirit as best they can with 3 to 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. But I think that that's probably one thing that my youngest has been a little jealous of her big sister, and the phenomenal school spirit that's happening at our local public school.
Julie, I want to be respectful of your time. Before I do, I want to give you the steering wheel. Is there something on your radar, something on your mind, something that I haven't asked about that perhaps I ought to?
I don't think so. I just think that, if you're looking for a school that is a warm and welcoming community that cares about your child deeply and is a partner in educating your child, um, then this would be a really great match for you.
If you were face to face with a parent right now who's dealing with that really big and important decision of what's the right school for their family, what's your advice to them?
I think that, parents know their children, but you also know yourselves. And so I think that often we need to find the right match for your child, but also the right match for your family. And so I would encourage people to think about that more holistically, I guess. And I think that we were able to find that at Cells, which is part of the reason we had such a positive experience. Both my children, again, who were very different, and then my husband and I, like all of us, have had an incredibly positive experience at the school because it is very much a partnership, very much positive learning environment, and very, very communicative. And with that communication, I think that has given us so many different touch points to be able to be part of our kids' learning.